Aristotle was a prestigious Greek philosopher, educator, and scientist. He was born in 384 BCE in Stagira, a Greek seaport in the region of Macedonia. Aristotle became inspired by Plato and was Plato's pupil. Both philosophers respected each other. The influence of Plato on Aristotle can be seen in the latter's early work. However, despite being inspired by Plato, Aristotle had a different way of viewing the world. Aristotle was concerned with how philosophy can be applied to subjects like the arts, logic, science, and writing. To many, Aristotle is seen as the reason why things are what they are in present day. Aristotle is credited with the invention of Western philosophy and civilization. To many, the world would not be same had Aristotle not created the three categories of knowledge: ethics, natural history, and metaphysics. Our collection of Aristotle quotes will give you an idea how he approached the various issues and topics of civilization. From his thoughts about government, his ideal of middle class, and his view on life and THW world. Top collection of Aristotle quotes. The law is reason, free from passion. Aristotle. The best friend is the man who in wishing me well wishes it for my sake. Aristotle. The beginning of reform is not so much to equalize property as to train the noble sort of natures not to desire more, and to prevent the lower from getting more. Aristotle. The end of labor is to gain leisure. Aristotle. The energy of the mind is the essence of life. Aristotle. The generality of men are naturally apt to be swayed by fear rather than reverence, and to refrain from evil rather because of the punishment that it brings than because of its own foulness. Aristotle. The educated differ from the uneducated as much as the living from the dead. Aristotle. The gods too are fond of a joke. Aristotle. The ideal man bears the accidents of life with dignity and grace, making the best of circumstances. Aristotle. The ideal man bears the accidents of life with dignity. The most perfect political community is one in which the middle class is in control, and outnumbers both of the other classes. Aristotle. The least initial deviation from the truth is multiplied later 1,000-fold. Aristotle. The moral virtues, then, are produced in us neither by nature nor against nature. Nature, indeed, prepares in us the ground for their reception, but their complete formation is the product of habit. Aristotle. The one exclusive sign of thorough knowledge is the power of teaching. Aristotle. The one exclusive sign of thorough knowledge is the power of teaching. The aim of the wise is not to secure pleasure, but to avoid pain. Aristotle. The greatest virtues are those which are most useful to other persons. Aristotle. Poetry is finer and more philosophical than history, for poetry expresses the universal, and history only the particular. Aristotle. Of all the varieties of virtues, liberalism is the most beloved. Aristotle. Whosoever is delighted in solitude is either a wild beast or a god. Aristotle. The roots of education are bitter, but the fruit is sweet. Aristotle. Perfect friendship is the friendship of men who are good, and alike in excellence. For these wish well alike to each other qua good, and they are good in themselves. Aristotle. No one would choose a friendless existence on condition of having all the other things in the world. Aristotle. Piety requires us to honor truth above our friends. Aristotle. Personal beauty is a greater recommendation than any letter of reference. Aristotle. Pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. Aristotle. The aim of art is to represent not the outward appearance of things, but their inward significance. Aristotle. The aim of art is to represent not the outward. Politicians also have no leisure, because they are always aiming at something beyond political life itself, power and glory, or happiness. Aristotle. Probable impossibilities are to be preferred to improbable possibilities. Aristotle. Quality is not an act, it is a habit. Aristotle. Republics decline into democracies, and democracies degenerate into despotisms. Aristotle. Suffering becomes beautiful when anyone bears great calamities with cheerfulness, not through insensibility but through greatness of mind. Aristotle. Temperance is a mean with regard to pleasures. Aristotle. Plato is dear to me, but dearer still is truth. Aristotle. Wishing to be friends is quick work, but friendship is a slow ripening fruit. Aristotle. What it lies in our power to do, it lies in our power not to do. Aristotle. We make war that we may live in peace. Aristotle. We must no more ask whether the soul and body are one than ask whether the wax and the figure impressed on it are one. Aristotle. We praise a man who feels angry on the right grounds and against the right persons, and also in the right manner at the right moment and for the right length of time. Aristotle. Well begun is half done. Aristotle. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Aristotle. What the statesman is most anxious to produce is a certain moral character in his fellow citizens, namely a disposition to virtue and the performance of virtuous actions. Aristotle. To run away from trouble is a form of cowardice, and, while it is true that the suicide braves death, he does it not for some noble object but to escape some ill. Aristotle. Wit is educated insolence. Aristotle. Without friends no one would choose to live, though he had all other goods. Aristotle. You will never do anything in this world without courage. It is the greatest quality of the mind next to honor. Aristotle.